Hey everyone, welcome to our YouTube live show. This is part of the real estate ride-along show that myself and Terrance Doyle record. And so as we publish these shows, we would like to do some live Q&A. So we actually have quite a full house here in the studio today because this is actually where we record stuff and actually get real estate transactions done as well. And Terrance and I were recording a podcast earlier on one of the syndication deals. And so we're fortunate to have Terrance's CFO, Ben Davis, here as well. How's it going, Ben?
Good. Glad to be here.
Glad to be on your first Bigger Pockets
That's right.
YouTube show.
That's right.
Yeah. So, Terrance.
We're going to fill time here.
You ready to start doing some? Yeah, we got to fill time here. We got questions coming. So, guys, type in your questions here. Obviously, the show is about multifamily investing for the most part because we like to bring guests along to come join the show with us, right along. So ask your multifamily questions. We'll go those preference, but other questions for investing, ask those. Ben's also amazing at underwriting. So if you guys got underwriting questions, Ben said bring on a great curveball for him to handle and answer. So we have some great questions on here.
So we should just brain dump since we don't have any questions yet.
You brain dump, I drink.
So one of the things Ben and I have been talking about is, we're trying to come back to first principles of why. So we're trying to ask the question why and a lot of the things in our business. And so one of the things we've been talking about is why Denver multifamily. So we started doing some research on the Denver market from an economics standpoint. And what we found, Chris Lopez, was that Denver is in the top 6 cities of GDP growth in the United States. There's 13 cities that outperform the United States in terms of GDP, 13. And Denver falls at number 6. So that's a great sign, which basically means that Denver is growing in the top 6 cities in the country that are outperforming the United States.
What are the other cities? Is it like Austin, Salt Lake? Is there like 18-hour cities, or do you know?
I think Austin was on there. Dallas was on there. Nashville. Ben will pull it up for us.
I'll grab it out of the Google section.
I was more concerned about Denver. I wasn't. I think there are some other cities like that on there. Yeah.
All right. Well, Ben's pulling up, guys. Ask questions on here. We are really here just to do some live Q&A. I mean, we talk real estate about 10 hours a day, probably 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot.
So ask questions here, guys, and we will start answering in a minute.
We got a debt quote today for 3.25, 7-year fixed, 2-year IO.
What type of property?
40 unit
multifamily. The one that you might take
40
out.
Unit multifamily.
What part of town is that in?
It's in North Denver. It's near a new development.
Northwest, not Westminster.
There's like a bunch of new house. I actually don't know this. It's right down the street from Irving, actually, across the interstate. And there's like a bunch of brand new $500,000 to $800,000 new builds.
Okay.
It was really interesting. And there's not really any apartments in the neighborhood. What's up? Look at this.
Join the party.
All right. So going through some questions here. We'll start with Aaron since he was the first one.
What's up,
Speed
Aaron?
wins. So Aaron, good on you.
Yeah.
So Aaron says, hey guys, besides asking realtors, what is the most accurate way to find the rents on a multifamily unit building? I'm in Massachusetts.
I like that. I like where Aaron's at. How do you underwrite rents? I use Hotpads and apartments.com, and then you could use Zillow as well. But Hotpads is my go-to. And you can type in the exact address. You can look at different buildings, duplexes, houses, basically everything in the area. And then you just compare square footage, rooms, bathroom, and then you can look at the finishes and compare those. So I like Hotpads, hotpads.com.
I use Zillow a lot. But I think Hotpads is owned by Zillow, isn't it? Are they in the Zillow umbrella?
I don't know.
I don't
know
so a lot of those free websites are great for the data. The next level down is, a realtor's gonna have like a pretty good understanding, but the best professional to talk to is a property manager. Like when we underwrite deals, we'll do a quick, a lot of times, hey, it's a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. We have a general idea of what rents are. A lot of times we'll double check with Hotpads or Zillow. And as we get more serious about the deal, if it kind of passes that very high level sniff test, we reach out to our property manager and say, hey, here's the address. What do you recommend on rents here?
One of the things I like about hot pads is that if I'm looking at a property that we have under contract, it'll send me updates every time that either a unit gets filled or if the price goes up or down. So I'm able to track basically how much demand there is for that area and if the price is fluctuating at all while we're in due diligence. So in hot pads, it keeps track of your searches and it'll send you updates.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll do something more often then.
Yeah.
So Ben, we have to give a shout out to Andrew here for the Hokies.
Hokey birds.
Yeah. If you guys know what a Hokie is, put the answer in the question box.
Wow. Wow, this just took a turn.
What? We got to shout out to it. All right, so on to like a real question here. From We Should Cook That says, where do you guys find your deals at?
We should cook that. I'm actually hungry right now.
That's like the best follow-up to what a Hokie bird is.
How do you succeed in real estate investing?
Well, okay, so from very high level to find deals, a lot of it just comes down to networking. So, I mean, agents, wholesalers, just people hustling, current investors. And one thing Terrance and I talk about, because we actually have we're both here in Denver market. We do a lot of like co-marketing together. We have a lot of people reach out. On this note, nothing against you in particular, We Should Cook That, but use your real name and use your last name. Like we have people reach out with like, oh, I'm AJ. There's no first name, there's no last name. Like, number one, like to reach out to people, use your full name, like be professional. Because if people reach out to me, they're not professional. They are not at the top of my inbox to reply to. I think you're the same way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if you do that, I may not respond.
Yeah. But I mean, you find a lot of deals. It's networking, right?
Yeah, networking. And then expanding on that, we talk about when you're meeting with brokers, wholesalers, you have to know your buy box. So I think anyone in real estate, their number one pet peeve is send me a deal, right? That means nothing to anybody. You will get no deals if that's your sales pitch for someone to bring you deals. So you have to know your criteria, be really specific about it, and be pre-approved. You have to be pre-approved from either a hard money lender, a private lender, have a proof of funds, have something that shows that you can close on a property, and you'll get much more motivated brokers sending you deals. And then when they send you deals, follow up. Those are the three things that I started out doing that I highly recommend. Just three fundamentals of how to do more deals is know your buy box, be pre-approved, and when people send you deals, respond right away. And you'll get more deals.
I mean, we were just talking on recording earlier. You said the very first, like you said, this first deal, for like 3 years. You said the first deal you did with them.
Yeah.
So I mean, have patience as well.
He's one of the top.
It's a long game.
Multifamily brokers in Denver. He's like probably the most senior guy in terms of value add. Yeah, it took me 3 years to build a relationship with him and to do our first deal.
Yeah. So don't expect to get results in 3 weeks. Like
patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
I like this question. Tristan asks, how do you recommend challenging a low appraisal on a multifamily property? The appraiser went with a sales comp approach versus an income approach. We've definitely dealt with this in the past.
Ben, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, I would say just communicate. I mean, you need to work with the lender, who ordered the appraiser, and hopefully the appraiser will participate in that conversation. And then I would say do your version of the appraisal independently, or with as many subject matter experts as you can. And you're going to kind of the best thing you can do is just present your case, in a professional, logical way with the income approach, including comps, and say, look, this building's getting these rents, making this NOI, and these transactions support this cap rate, or whatever metric, whatever price that you guys are talking about, and try and convince your lender that the initial appraisal is totally off and illogical, and that the numbers you came up with are accurate and the market supports those numbers. And the lender should agree with you if the numbers are there.
So Tristan, if you are the seller, you have some leverage, and you can either request them to use another lender or have that same lender order a second opinion or another appraisal. And if they're taking a sales comp approach, then it's 4 units or less. And they're probably going off of square footage and maybe finishes in the area. And, whoever's buying it most likely is buying it as an income property. And it's really just comes down to, it's so subjective. It really comes down to the specific appraiser. And so I think you either need to discuss terminating, getting a new appraiser, or switching lenders. If you're the seller, if you're the buyer and really want to see it go through, then I think you need to be working with the seller and working on the terms of the deal and what the lender's requesting you to come up with for equity. I think that's really where you're at. It depends on which side of the table you're on. But if you're the buyer and you really want to buy the property, then you just need to be working with the seller on terms.
And you said something that's really good to highlight in there, that if it's 4 units or less, the sales approach is the main way they're going to value the property. They'll use the income approach, but it's going to be mostly sales comps. 5 units or more is going to be income approach. So if you're below, like, you can't only use the income approach, because they have to underwrite it, or I think underappraise it by the sales approach.
Right. They'll use both. It just depends on which one they weight more, and that really is a subjective thing on the specific appraiser.
And that's the other thing. Yeah.
Because some appraisers will take the income approach more. Other appraisers will take the sales comp. And when you're talking about sales, they're primarily just going off of finishes and square footage in that location, which is very, very subjective.
She chimed back in and said this is for refinance. So I actually just
the refi.
I just had the same thing personally.
Units are remodeled and get higher rents. They gave me the same value.
Read it out loud.
Yeah, this is for a refinance. My units are remodeled and get higher rents, but they gave me the same value as a property, 1,000 per square foot smaller, and not rehab. Yeah, so you just need to contest that. So you would call the lender or go to a different lender, and you'd contest that. And basically, you're just going to show that your units are rehabbed, show them the leases, and exactly what you just showed us, that the property's smaller. And if they're not willing to do that, I would just switch lenders. Right now, lending is very difficult. I'll add that. Lending's very difficult. Every lender is going to be very, very conservative. So they're going to take the lowest common denominator and say that's the value. So you're going to have to hustle really hard to convince them otherwise to give you more leverage. You may have to find either a credit union or a local bank. I'm not sure who you're using, but I would go with a credit union or local bank. Normally, they tend to be the most aggressive, but that is difficult. And every lender right now is being very conservative, especially on a refi.
And I mean, this almost sounds very similar to the fourplex I bought from you, which was, a fourplex that you flipped in Denver here. And there's probably about, in this part of town, there's probably 10 fourplexes that are just, they are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And Terrance had bought this. It had been not lived in for 10 years, complete mess. Came in there, rehabbed it. Updated everything.
Right.
Tenants in there, everything was good. My first appraisal came back at $670, and we were under contract for around $850. And the appraisal was horrible because they actually used some comps across the street, which same thing, lower rents, updated in the 80s, and they sold for $700.
Right.
So it was legitimately a bad appraisal. So we went back to the lender, and the lender went back to the appraisal company and said, hey, this is just basically bogus. I'm sure you use a more professional word, but hey, went back there and redid it. New appraisal came in above the purchase price, and it was fine. But you do have to, if it came in that standpoint, you have a really good argument on there. Where you can say, hey, my property is remodeled, it's bigger, I'm getting better rents on this stuff, and you actually have a very legitimate case to go in there and explain it, but just do a very good job of documenting it. Share a copy of your spreadsheet or all your cost on there as well, share the money you put in there. That's a big thing. The more you can document that stuff, the more it helps the appraiser. You put $100,000 in here. Yes, this makes a big difference.
Yeah. Showing the receipts, what you spent on construction, showing pictures and the leases should get you as close as you're going to get to convincing them. And
I would call the appraisal, it's half science and half art.
Right.
So, you just have to do your best to finesse it for a very, poor way to answer your question. But it's one of our frustrations is 2 appraisers, 2 different valuations, and they're both freaking right. All right. What question to pick up next on here?
They're rolling in.
I know. Well, there was one I saw
Nathan?
here.
Up there, I'm viewing a duplex.
All right. So Nathan says, hey, I'm doing a duplex today at 2 p.m. Pacific. So in like 40 minutes. Any big things I should keep in mind when viewing? Also, how common is it to request that the seller get the tenant out before closing? So big item. So I'm assuming this is going to be for a house hack. If you're looking at a duplex, probably a house hack. So you're probably using FHA financing. Are you viewing it or are you under contract? I mean, I don't know. It depends what state you're in here. We're in Colorado. We have a very buyer-friendly contract. And so when we go walk it, again, hopefully you're working with, an agent or professional that knows that game. They should have a checklist, but look at the big things. Mechanicals. What's the age of the furnace, the water heater? Is it, an old electrical panel? What's the condition of the property? I don't get tripped up on cosmetic stuff, but some big things like sewer and roof, it's really hard to see while you're walking it. So what I do personally when I advise my clients, if it looks good while you walk the property, and this is just comes down to the stuff we talked about, layout, are there egress windows for liability reasons and safety reasons? If it looks good, put in a contract, then always get an inspector to go in there and inspect the property, do the roof, and do the sewer scope. And if you're living there, do a radon test as well if you're in that part of the country. Anything to add?
If I was looking at a duplex, which we actually just put a duplex under contract that I actually really like in Denver, I'm looking at, does it have a garage? How big are the bedrooms? I think bedroom size in that kind of a property are really kind of overlooked because that's going to dictate rents. I'm going to look at, does it have a washer dryer? That's going to impact rents. And I'm looking at the cosmetics, how does the kitchen look? How does the bathroom look? How do the appliances look? So that way I can get a total number of rehab that I'm going to spend to turn the unit, to either Airbnb it, to rent it, whatever you're going to do with it. And I'm just keeping track of those things. I'm taking a bunch of pictures, and then I am going to use that to do a rent study in that area. I think that's pretty much what I would look at if I was looking at a duplex.
So here's a good one. In your opinion, what do you look for in a good property management company? And so, Terrance, I almost set this question up for you because, you live in Denver, but you have, holdings in Des Moines, Iowa, and also Denver. And you've definitely been through the ringer in property managers, long distance.
Yeah.
And you've got a great setup long distance and a great local property manager as well now here in Denver. So what do you look for?
Yeah, I've lost from maintenance, vacancy, delinquency, hundreds of thousands of dollars on bad property management. We actually recorded, I think, a podcast on this that you could check out. But, the most important thing you want to understand is you have to put yourself in their position. So I would look at, depending on the size of your property. So if it's a duplex, single family home, or a large apartment complex, who the right property manager is going to differ. There's certain property management companies that are really good for large apartments, and there's other property managers that are really good on single family or condos or smaller multis like duplex and fourplex. So you have to first identify, what is the property that I'm buying, and then what are other property managers in the same vicinity, so same zip code, that are managing other properties that look good, that are the similar size. And then you want to find out how well staffed they are. So one of the questions would be, how many leasing agents do they have versus the number of units? So if they're managing, let's say 1,000 units and have 1 or 2 leasing agents, that's not the right ratio. You want to be somewhat closer to 100 to 150 units for every leasing agent. So finding out how many leasing agents they have. I think another question is, how do you handle maintenance? If they say that we have 3 in-house plumbers and 2 in-house handymen, that's what you want to see, because that you're going to control the cost a lot more versus, we maybe have 1 in-house handyman and everything else we sub out. When a property management company says they sub work out, that basically just means you're paying retail, which means every maintenance call is going to cost you probably twice as much as what it should. So those are some high level things that I would be asking for. But I think the first thing is identifying, the size of your property. And then from there, you can work backwards into who the right management company is. And then once you sit in front of, and interview 2 or 3 that specialize in either duplex, single family, condo, or multifamily. And then from there, you want to find out, how many leasing agents and how many in-house maintenance people they have, because those are going to be the 2 biggest ticket items.
I think that was great. I've done the add on there. That was a great answer. So Tim says, aren't single family homes a better bet right now than multifamily homes until the coronavirus is over? We'll know in like, what, 6 to 5 years or 6 months to 5 years, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we actually talked about this earlier
we
because
did.
just on scaling, even just from like, a small multi to a big one, I don't think there's any clear-cut answer. I think a lot depends on the market. Like, hey, if you're looking to buy a multifamily in New York right now or San Francisco, probably say it's not a great time to buy that since people are exiting the cities. But
Minneapolis, Chicago.
I don't know, are they having the same
I think
exodus as well?
Mass exodus. Yeah.
Okay. In Denver, we've not seen that yet.
We're having a lot of migration.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of migrations here for both renters and buyers.
Yeah.
But we were talking about scaling. Like, great, if you have, one home, single family home, and your tenant's house paying, you're 100% loss. If you have a fourplex and 2 tenants stop paying, you're probably not covering your mortgage. You're probably a little bit below your mortgage cost. But if you have a 100 unit and 20 people stop paying, you're still paying your mortgage, no problem. So it's a very loaded question.
Yeah, I think, Tim, definitely understand where you're coming from. A lot of people are asking the same questions. A lot of people are, really worried about other people wanting to live so close in proximity. But I would just say that it's really market specific. If you have strong job growth and a housing shortage and you have positive migration, naturally there's going to be high occupancy in multifamily or single family. Now, if you live in a market where there isn't positive migration, not positive job growth, and people are leaving, then you just probably shouldn't be investing in that market, or you need to be very hyper focused on the location inside of that market because people are going to want to live in the best areas and not in the other areas. So you want to be really focused on the micro location. But just a personal, experience. We were talking, before the show. We have a 130 unit in Des Moines, Iowa, and the mortgage is $15,000 a month, and the average rent is $650. So basically, if half the building left, we would still be able to cover the mortgage. And on single family, that's just not the case. And so that's the upside of multifamily and the downside of single family. And obviously with Corona, the downside of multifamily is that you're closer to other people. So the risk of catching something goes up. But I think that, what I've seen from our tenants, in Denver and Des Moines is that we haven't had a big exodus. People are paying, people are staying. And as long as everyone's respectful and, wearing a mask and washing their hands. And if you're high risk, you probably need to be staying inside. And if you're not, you need to be respectful of other people's space. That's worked out well for us. But I really think it comes down to the specific market you're in to answer that question.
I also think the class of property, because the only asset class in Denver I've heard where they're having, rent decreases and higher vacancy, these are like the brand new Class A big buildings in downtown Denver. Denver, right now, Denver's, got 3 million population. And I mean, since the last crash, there's just been a huge apartment boom in downtown, all, brand new Class A stuff, hundreds of units in each building. They've actually saw a rent decrease by like $30 some in the last quarter here in Denver, and talk to some PMs too. That's the only area in town we're having trouble renting it. It's everything from people not wanting to live there because, hey, you live in a downtown area because you want to be near the bars and the restaurants and you're living down there to do the cool stuff. Well, half that stuff is closed right now.
Right.
Plus, they were actually telling me, it's the property manager we use, she was telling me that they literally have to clear out homeless people now to go show some property. So it's just been a lot more homeless or the rioting. So I think there's a couple things going on. So the only area that we've never really invested, I'm still telling clients not to, is don't buy right in downtown Denver. And I think a lot of cities are similar on there. But for the multifamilies that we're buying in the outskirts, the suburbs, the Class B, the Class C stuff, I mean, they've been performing really well. And our property managers are saying, hey, there's huge demand. And, overall, people are renting and tenants are paying rent.
Yeah,
so
that's well said.
Now, if you want to do a total appreciation play, if you have a couple $100,000 to park, you'll probably make more money appreciation buying a detached single family home. But your cash flow, at least here in Denver, is going to be, non-existent or very, very minimal. So it depends on your returns. But
yeah,
nothing here in Denver scares me for multifamily. I mean, not for you. You're putting a 40 unit under contract tomorrow, right?
Or maybe like next hour. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say just, if you're stuck between multifamily and single family, just, get on Excel or, piece of paper and a pencil and, plug in 10, 20 and 30, 40, 50, 100% vacancy, for how many months. And, single family, if you buy into overnight equity at, a couple $100,000 and a tenant, it's vacant for 2 months, that may be worth it. And, in multifamily, if you can operate at 80% vacancy, and that may be worth it, but you should test out, up to 50% vacancy, I would say, for the next year, and make sure you can cover all your expenses, and that'll give you a pretty good idea of which one's better.
Hope that was helpful, Tim.
Let's see here. Raymond says, I am 23 years old, looking to buy my first rental property investment. I'm from New York. I have a good amount of money saved up. I'm looking to start house hacking with the least capital as possible. I mean, house hacking is the way to go.
Right.
Or for like the least amount of money down.
And if you're in New York, you should be getting some good deal flow. There's probably going to be a lot of opportunity there.
Are you in New York City or like New York State? Like upstate New York or New York City? Because those are, two very different markets. But
your first-time home buyer, he can buy up to 500. What's the jumbo? 565 now, at as little as 3% down.
I think in New York it's probably higher. It depends on the market. Like Denver's for a duplex, like 700.
Yeah, I mean single family is 575.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And then so I would think you'd get a lot higher in New York, just cost of living.
And it's 3% down though, right? 3.5.
FHA's 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah,
that's the way to go.
Yeah, so I mean, you got the right. If you're buying, and all house hacking is, I always, I explain it. You're buying a future rental property. You have to live in there for 1 year, but it's a future rental property.
Plant perspective. It's a good question for you.
The plant perspective asks, what are your thoughts on becoming an agent during this time? It's like anything. I mean, I think there's, personally, I think, while crises are unfortunate, they also have a lot of opportunity in there. And so the real estate market overall still stayed very strong. I know Denver very well. I know from national level, we've had a pretty much an overall housing shortage since 2008. So it depends on what your long-term plans are and what your cash position is. If you don't have money in the bank or financial runway, as I like to say, for like at least a year, hey, how are you going to pay for your bills, pay your rent, pay your mortgage, pay your food, pay your business operating costs for a year? I would not become an agent. But being an agent, it's not particularly hard. It's not rocket science. You're not doing brain surgery, but it takes time. Can you get through that initial 12-month, 18-month hurdle of where you're learning the market, getting your network out there and getting deal flow? Because you will not make money quickly in real estate, generally speaking. So if you got the financial runway and aligned with your long-term goals, like I became an agent a number of years ago because I built a couple businesses totally unrelated to real estate, but from just some business partnership issues, trend issues, being bored issues, it's time for me to move on. And real estate was always on my radar to learn investing it into. So I realized becoming an agent was the best way to do it. But fortunately, I had a lot of money saved up. I had residuals coming in from my current, my old business. And my wife, she had a job. So we made sure all of our bills were below what her salary could afford. That way I had plenty of time to go out there and build a business. And it's worked out very well. So I think if you got the long-term perspective financial runway, I think it'd be a very great time to get into it.
Yeah, my general thoughts, I'm not a real estate agent. My general thoughts are it's a good time to do anything you want in life if you have the right mentality and the right fundamentals. If you're willing to work hard, take a lot of rejection, be really persistent, and have a lot of energy, I think you can crush it regardless of the market, up or down. It just comes down to, kind of what your makeup is and what your tolerance for risk and how much rejection and how many no's you're willing to hear. And if you can take that and you have a strong work ethic, I think you can do really well right now.
What are your thoughts, Ben?
I'm not an agent either, but there's nothing saying, you can't get your, work on your license at before work, after work, on the weekends, put in that extra time, get the license through your state and start learning while you're, doing whatever else you're doing, or get through this time with the virus. I don't advocate anyone doing anything halfway, but that doesn't mean you can't go through like the certifications and all that stuff now. And then when opportunity comes, or you're ready, like Chris said, you have that financial runway, then you make the jump. So you're only going to get smarter as you work at it.
All right, guys. Well, I know we had about 30 minutes blocked out to do this. We got to run out to go do some real estate stuff, contracts, properties, all that stuff. So we're going to wrap up here. We have more ride-along shows dropping here in the very near future. We got 4 recording more. This should be out very soon in bigger pockets, so keep your eyes out for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Click on the bell notification as well. And these next ride-along shows, if you guys are watching them, let us know, because we're changing the format slightly based on some feedback and trying to just give a different perspective on some things. So let us know how you like the new shows out as well.
We're recording a great one this Saturday, I think, right? Recording this Saturday?
Yeah, I know.
Right,
we're recording this Saturday. I know we're recording one.
Yeah, multifamily, and then this duplex.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a great one.
Yeah, Burr duplex and a 25-unit multifamily that we just bought.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, Terrance, Ben, thank you guys.
Boom.